Thank you all for coming today on a Saturday morning to learn about our education programs and get involved in what we do. Super excited to share our program stuff with you and get you out into the field with us. We're a small education team, and so extra hands are always super, super helpful. Just to give you an overview, myself, I'm the Education and Outreach Manager. So I am directing the programs, steering them, and then coming out to lessons when I can, when time allows. We have an AmeriCorps Education Coordinator, who is the main person who leads our in-school lessons. So when you all come out and join for a lesson, she will be the one that you're primarily working with. We have another Education and Outreach Coordinator who oversees our after-school programming, which is a new expansion. I'll get into it a little bit. We currently are still testing things and are not sure how volunteers might help in that space. So we're sticking with in-school stuff for now, and then down the road, we'll have opportunities for you all to come and help with after-school things if you'd like. So we'll go ahead and jump in. I want to give you all a quick overview of RiverLink as a whole. RiverLink was founded back in 1987 with the mission of promoting the environmental and economic vitality of the French Broad River watershed for all. Recently, well, within the past 5 years, we added that for all part because we made equity the #1 strategic priority within our organization, making sure that these spaces, this river, these streams are accessible to everyone, and that we can share ownership and stewardship of these spaces. And so we do our work through basically 3 major programs. We have our water quality program, which focuses on managing stormwater. It's maybe the highest priority, but also doing stream bank restorations to prevent erosion, doing homeowner education on how they can reduce their stormwater runoff, whether that's installing rain barrels, disconnecting their downspouts, installing rain gardens, all sorts of cool things like that. And then we have our education program, of course, and we'll talk more about it, but basically we have in-school, out-of-school, and summer camps are the main components, along with a really fun art and poetry contest in the spring. And then finally, our conservation arm of the organization. We are the only urban land conservation in the area, which means we are focused on small parcels of land. This may be like, 1/4-acre parcels in the Burton Street community that are natural green spaces, and we hold them and preserve them in that state. We work with the communities to figure out what sort of needs they might have. So, for instance, we have a property in Burton Street community on Florida Avenue, and we've been working with Hood Huggers and the Burton Street Community Center to kind of figure out what does that property become. And basically, they want it to be a space to host events, to do little farmers markets, but they want it to be, open air, natural green space. And so it's a very unique element of what we do, and we're still sorting out, what does our role as urban land trust look like. But we have, I want to say, 27 properties, whether they are conservation easements or fee simple, which means we own them and we're stewarding. So that's kind of the big picture of RiverLink. And with all of this, like I said, the French Broad River is our focus, so our service area is that entire watershed. And just to kind of review the most important parts that we see, especially for our in-school side of things. First of all, River RATS stands for River Recreation and Appreciation Through Science, acronym. Basically, an excuse for us to call it River RATS. Like we said in the video, all programs are offered free of charge to pretty much everyone that we work with. This is maybe the most important part of the program. We strive really hard to break down any barriers that there might be for teachers to have these programs, for students to get outdoors with us. And so, yeah, making sure that it has no cost is really important. And we're exploring options to cover transportation costs for schools as well, and provide some stipends for classroom supplies after we have left that class. Uh, the in-school programs are focused on stream ecology. We're trying to reach those curriculum standards. We're trying to help them with their testing. And then our after-school stuff has shifted to a social and emotional focus. We started with just trying to do our scientific lessons in after school and quickly found kids have no attention span for that after school. And so we've shifted to try and help them use nature as this background to manage emotions, to regulate themselves, and to connect with others and the environment. And it's been a really nice shift so far, but we're going to keep exploring. Our lessons, we work with K through 12. It's a wide range of ages and can definitely be a challenge to adjust our teaching styles, but every single age group is incredible to work with. They have different challenges, but also different highlights of our work with them. Our primary focus, though, is 3rd through 8th. These are the grades where the curriculum standards really align with stream ecology, with topics of water quality, the water cycle, watersheds, all these things. So that is the primary age groups that we work with. And when you come out on lessons, those will be the main ones that you'll see. Like I've said, essential standards, really important for our program. It allows it to be a huge benefit, not just for the students, but also the teachers to address the things in their classrooms that may be difficult to drive home without a hands-on interactive kind of program. And then for everything we do, we provide all of the tools, all of the equipment. We have a huge stockpile of Crocs for any kids that don't have water shoes, because we want to make sure that they can get in no matter what. And then our top priority is to connect with these schools that do not have the resources to go out and do these things. Their teachers, their time is limited, and so they're not able to, pull together lesson plans that are getting their students outdoors and doing these sort of things. So looking at our in-school programs and the exact things that we do, we have things that we do in the classroom because sometimes it's raining, sometimes it's the winter, and so we want opportunities that we can bring in. And our most popular one is our stream table simulation. You saw that in the video. It's incredible. It has a bunch of basically microplastics that we fill into this table and simulate a river. And then we explore erosion, we explore flooding, we explore the inequitable effects of flooding, and then possible solutions like riparian buffers. Our big one with that is driving home the idea of plants along the rivers, because so often we see grass that is mowed right up to the river, which creates a whole host of problems with those shallow roots, just can't hold the bank together. So we see increased erosion, which, if you all aren't familiar, sediment and erosion is the #1 pollutant of our river here. So anything we can do to control it is a huge benefit to the French Broad. And the best way we can do it is to plant plants along our banks. Those deep root systems really work to hold it together. They help absorb excess water, and they can even attract beneficial bacteria to kind of remove some of the pollutants from the water as well. So really wonderful simulation. It requires a lot of work, so in a bit we'll go over kind of what you all could do to help us with that one, because that one does require some extra hands. It's really nice to have. We also have a stormwater model that we can bring into the classroom. This one's way easier to set up, and actually we don't have a need for volunteer help with this one because one person can run it really well. But it allows us to explore different types of land uses, things like wetlands versus parking lots versus retention ponds, and see what that downstream impact is, and talk about possible solutions for managing runoff or managing stormwater. Again, super fun, mostly because it floods the whole model. Kids love any time that there's destruction. We have seen that. So we definitely embrace that and try to use it as a teaching tool. And then we do cover the water cycle. We have a fun game called The Incredible Journey. If you have been in environmental education before, you might be familiar with it. It's pretty popular. But basically, there are stations throughout the room that represent different stages of the water cycle. It might be groundwater, it might be a river, a glacier, the clouds, the ocean. And at each station, there is a die that students will roll, and that directs them to the next station. At each station, they collect a colorful bead to add to a bracelet. And so at the end of the lesson, every single student has a completely unique bracelet, basically illustrating that, our water drops are molecules, they never follow the same path. It's a general cycle, but it has so many different stages and ways that water can transition between them. So that one's really fun. We've actually found recently that 7th grade needs water cycle content a lot. And so we added in some water molecule models as well to help reinforce the ideas of, transforming states of matter, gas to liquid to solid. So that's been fun because the game is great, but it's really fun for the kids, the young ones, although 7th graders do some. We also have what we call micro macros. This is mostly a backup lesson for when it's raining and we can't go out and search the stream. We have preserved species of macros that we will bring into the classroom with a microscope. We connect it to a projector, and then we kind of explore anatomy of these bugs with kids. We talk about their pollution tolerance, their functional feeding groups, which is basically the ways that they consume food in the stream and the various services that they can provide to the ecosystem. And then we share fun facts. One of my favorites is with dragonfly nymphs. They basically shoot air and water out of their butt to jet propel themselves towards their prey. Kids love to talk about butt jets, so all of those kind of facts are really, really entertaining to share. And so we have a whole repertoire of fun facts that can also be shared with volunteer educators so that you all can increase your knowledge as well. And then we're currently working to develop a lesson on history and culture, specifically around the river. So this is going to be a lot of things like the Cherokee and how they stewarded the river, things like the Buncombe County Turnpike and how that impacted the river and trade in the area, things like the Clean Water Act and the impact that had. So we are chugging through that, trying to figure out how to make it as interactive as possible, because history can be a dense subject, and we don't want to just be up there lecturing about history. So down the road, we will let volunteer educators know what's going on with that and what sort of help we might need in the classroom there. But the stuff in the field, of course, the most fun stuff. We love getting out into the streams with the kids, and macroinvertebrate sampling is the primary one that we do. Because what kid doesn't love splashing around and looking for bugs? And at the end of the day, we have our learning objectives that we want to reach. But if a kid had a good time in the stream, if they found a bug and got to touch a bug for the first time, that's a win. Hopefully they'll retain some of the more advanced knowledge, how to use a dichotomous key, how to identify water quality based on the species. But just enjoying their time outdoors is one of our primary objectives with these lessons. We also do water chemistry testing, particularly with the older groups. And so we sample for 5 water quality index standards, pretty basic ones. We do turbidity, we do dissolved oxygen, pH, nitrates, and phosphates. And over the years, we have collected a whole bunch of different styles of reagent tests, things that change color, things that they have to use, specific equipment, because we found that when we use like electronic readings, it's not as exciting. You stick it in the water and you see a number on the screen. And you're like, cool, okay, that's what the dissolved oxygen level is. And so that's kind of a theme throughout all of our lessons. So we try and make it really, really fun and engaging as much as possible, and reduce the density of the content that we're trying to cover. But then also knowing that as educators, we hold that knowledge for the students that want to dive deeper, and kind of let them lead that inquiry for us. Because at the end of the day, we want to speak to what they're interested in, not just what we want to share with them. And then we are also developing a plant-focused lesson because that is a huge curriculum standard as well. There are so many of them that focus on the structures of plants and all of that. And so again, trying to brainstorm ways to make it really engaging, really interactive, but also fit within our timeframes and not require too many disposable resources. So again, once that one is ready and we know how volunteer educators can help, we will spread the word much more. So looking at out of school, like I said earlier, at the moment, not opportunities for volunteer educators to engage with this because we're still testing things, trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. We started this after school expansion last spring. And so, yeah, slow process. We want to make sure that we're moving slowly and making sure that things work before we continue on. But the structure of this is we work with established after-school partners. Right now, that includes Open Doors, it includes Christine W. Avery Learning Center, it includes United Way, Parks and Rec, and Big Brothers Big Sisters, many, many more. Because we found we can't host a whole after-school program. You know, we're a small nonprofit, but if we can work with these groups that have trusted relationships with these families that are primarily low-income BIPOC families, Black and Indigenous people of color, in case you're not familiar, then you know that is a huge win for us, and it means we can bring free enrichment to them as well and help further their goals that they have with their students. And that element is why we shifted from the science focus to the social and emotional. Because the program providers, our partners that we were working with, they indicated that science was not the biggest need, that they needed social and emotional stuff for their kids, especially after the pandemic, after virtual learning, after all this stuff, kids are lacking some of these skills. And so the outdoors is an excellent conduit to try and teach those things. So that's the goal. We're creating relationships with community partners, with the students, and enhancing their relationships with each other and nature. These programs, unlike our in-school programs, they are not one-off things where we come into the classroom, we do our lesson and we leave. We work with these groups basically once a week, every week for 8 weeks. So we're coming back to the same group of kids. We're doing new activities with them. Our education and outreach coordinator, Leah Worley, has done a great job of creating this curriculum focused on social and emotional stuff, where each week we focus on a different coping skill. And so they might do art by the river and learn how that could help them regulate or deal with difficult situations they might have had at school that day. Another day might focus on music. Another day might focus on mindfulness and meditation. And so just trying to build up kids' skill sets in those realms. And for all of these things, we have a 15-passenger van, so we provide the transportation. We basically go to our partners' after-school facilities, pick up their kids, and drive them around to local parks. Our big limitation we found is timing. After school is a short time frame. We would love to take them to places like Powhatan, but we have found it's traffic is really difficult, and so we aren't able to make those things happen. But luckily, we have some beautiful parks right here in Asheville that we can utilize. Okay, so as a volunteer educator, what are the ways that you all can help? There's quite a few, and mostly it's going to be just an extra pair of hands and an extra brain to kind of work individually with students. So as we're setting up the stream table, as we're carrying equipment down to the stream, extra hands, of course, super helpful. But then in a lot of our lessons, macroinvertebrates, for instance, we have the kids kind of explore the stream freely. It's not a super guided thing. And the role of our educators is to wander around, give individual attention, help them look in the right places if they're getting frustrated, if they can't find something, help them identify the cool things that they did find, and of course, make sure that they're staying safe. All of those sort of tasks are kind of the general theme throughout all of the different types of lessons. that you all can potentially help with. And then passing out materials is always a nice way to alleviate the stress on our primary educator so that they can focus on sharing the content and setting expectations for the students instead of having to hand out, our data collection sheets, for instance. So let's go into, basically we have 4 of our lessons that could definitely use some volunteer help. Our stream table is a big one, especially at the beginning and the end of the day. It takes roughly 45 minutes to an hour to set this thing up. It requires carrying in 10 5-gallon buckets filled with water and sand, and then setting up all of the electronic equipment to get the river actually flowing through the table. So it is a long process. We definitely try to work with teachers to schedule so that we can be set up ahead of time for lessons that start at like 8:30. Not trying to, have an insanely early start. But that is a huge place where volunteer educators would be helpful. And then also between lessons, we need to reset the table. Basically, kids will have dug in it, they'll have reset the landscape, they'll have built dams that will be destroyed. There will be homes and sponges and plants all buried in the table. And so making it look all nice for the next group that comes in is a big help as well. And just to backtrack a little bit, kind of the structure of our in-school stuff. A lot of groups we might go and we'll do one lesson. They have their charter school, they have smaller groups, so it's like 15 kids, and we just do one thing for an hour and a half. There are other schools, however, like Asheville High School that we work with, and we go through like their entire 9th grade throughout the course of 2 days. So we were with them on Friday, and we'll be with them again on Monday. And each day we went through 4 lessons. Each lesson had 25 to 30 students. And we had about an hour with each one because we try and keep it to their bell schedule so that it is even less of a barrier for the teachers to plan. They're not having to figure out how to take students out of other classes and all this stuff. So it can be tight time frames, and we've done our best to try and boil down information really, really well for when we do have limited time with a group. Ideally, most lessons will be about 60 minutes, but it might be as short as 45. It might be as long as 90 minutes. So that's kind of the breakdown of that. And I'll go into how you all can plug into that schedule in a little bit. As for all of our lessons, a common theme you'll see is take pictures. As the educators, it's really hard to remember to take pictures. But we love to share, the work that we're doing. It's really heartwarming for people to see. And so if you're out there on a lesson with us, taking some pictures and sharing them afterwards is a really big help for sure. With macroinvertebrates, again, it's carrying supplies to and from the stream. It is passing out materials, nets, getting students fitted with Crocs, which that's a whole process. We have, maybe 100 Crocs, I want to say, but we don't have exact sizes, and so it's just, troubleshooting. This kid has tiny feet, you get our smalls. So extra hands are really, really good. And then, like I said earlier, walking around and giving that individual attention is huge. And I know when I'm on a lesson, that's my favorite part. Because sometimes I'll grab a net myself and go look if kids aren't having a whole bunch of luck. Because after years and years, I know kind of the places to look. And that way they can actually have something to look at. Because it's a big bummer if we do a macro lesson and we don't find anything. That's definitely something to talk about with the students and say, what does that mean for the quality of the stream? But let's be real, at the end of the day, they want to see some bugs. They want to see some salamanders, some crayfish, all these things. And so helping them look for them, looking for them yourself, and then guiding them to places to search, all really, really wonderful ways to help out. With our water chemistry one, again, carrying supplies, passing out materials. But then with this one, in our water quality kits, we have basically a set of instruction cards to help guide them through each of the testing standards. We've tried to make them as simple as possible, but students can still struggle sometimes. And so as educators, we basically cycle through groups. Typically, there are groups of roughly 3 to 5 students to one kit. And so we'll cycle through and make sure that they're, completing the tests accurately and kind of absorbing what does that quality standard mean? What does it indicate? So if we're looking at dissolved oxygen and they find a low amount, what is the consequence of that? And those are things as a volunteer educator, you might not be able to share right off the bat. And that's okay. We don't want this to be a thing where you have to have deep stream ecology knowledge to be able to participate. Like I've said multiple times, being able to just be an extra pair of hands and eyes for safety is excellent. But we do have some resources that you all can access later to increase your knowledge and be able to maybe provide a little bit more information to the students when you're out there with us. And then our water cycle, again, it is pass out supplies. It is prepare those stations. The beads that we put at each one, they run out quickly, so making sure those are refilled. With the younger kids, tying off their bracelets is huge. Like such a minor thing, but it does make a big difference having an extra pair of hands, especially because they will often drop them and then lose all of the beads. And
that probably goes well.
It's a devastating moment.
Yeah. Probably super stoked for that.
Yeah. So having adults to help make sure that doesn't happen is wonderful. And then as they're playing the game, again, it's kind of a free thing. We're not guiding them really heavily through it, but we're keeping an eye on their journey, on where they're going, and making sure they understand, where do they go next after they rolled this die? Are they getting frustrated because they got stuck in the ocean for like 5 rolls, which does happen. The ocean station, it has a block, and I think all of the sides except for one, you stay in the ocean. That one side, maybe it's 2, you get evaporated back up into the clouds. And so they get really frustrated when they have to stay at one place. Yeah. So having an adult be able to come through and say, okay, stayed like 5 times, let's just have them go to the clouds. Like, you're good. So yeah, trying to help resolve some of those situations when students are getting really frustrated, I think is kind of a common theme between all of the opportunities in the lessons. Yeah. So a typical day when you come out to join us on a lesson. Basically, for any school, you will have to check in at the front office. They need to know that we're on campus, and they will be able to tell you in many cases where the classroom is or where to go meet the groups. Sometimes they won't, and in those cases, the platform we have for you all to sign up for stuff, we'll have a contact number for you to call our educator and kind of figure out where they're moving. Like I said, right here. Okay. And then our educator will give you some more instructions when you arrive for what they need help with that day. And then if you have signed up for multiple lessons, between those, you can help kind of reset the equipment and make sure we're prepared for the next group to come in. And as I've said a couple times during that lesson, you'll just be walking around helping the students on individual levels. Basically, throughout the day, we will have multiple shifts for lessons. If it's a one-off thing where we're working with a charter school, you can just come for that one lesson and then we'll be done. If it's one of these bigger days with like the public schools, we'll have the volunteer shifts broken down by lesson. So you could come for just one lesson that's 45 to 60 minutes, or you could stay with us for multiple lessons throughout the day. Just depends on what your availability is. We want to make it, pretty flexible. If you only have an hour to give, like, that's awesome. We still super appreciate the extra hands for that time. But if you want to join us for a full, 6-hour day, up to you. Like, we would love that. But I know from firsthand experience that can be a tiring day. So we don't want to put that requirement on. So to get started in this whole process, to come and engage with the students, first of all is going to be a background check and a sexual abuse awareness training. Basically, we have to have this for anyone who's going to work with the students, make sure that they're safe. As the gatekeeper of access to these students, we just want to make sure that the people who we're bringing in are reputable, are safe for the kids. I have a great feeling about everyone here, so I'm sure background checks will come back wonderful, but it's still a red tape thing that we have to go through. Once you have passed that background check, I will send you access to our lesson calendar. This is located on our website. I'll show it to you in just a bit, and it's password protected. That way people can't just go on and figure out, oh, Riverlink's at this school this day. I'll just show up and say I'm with Riverlink. And so once you have access to that, you'll be able to see all of the lessons we have scheduled for the coming weeks, months, whatever, and sign up for your shifts there. We will also send you some of our educator resources. We have a educator guide that it's about 35 pages, goes deep into all of the content that we cover, both at the surface level and then more advanced level if you want to learn that and share it with the students who are like really curious. And then finally, our educators will check in with you before lessons that you signed up for to make sure you have the information that you need to come out and participate effectively. So I think that's my last. Yes. Before we go into questions, I want to real quick show you all our volunteer educator page. This is on our website under environmental education. And so if you scroll down, we have this section for existing volunteers and our link to our volunteer educator calendar. So like I said, we will share this login info with you once you complete the background checks. But I will log in right now and show you all what the back end looks like. So when you go in, you will see a list of our upcoming lessons. We have quite a few at the moment and a whole bunch more with Owen Middle School that we'll be adding very soon once they get us the official schedules. But when you click on one, let's click on our stream table stuff. You'll be taken to the dashboard for Point Volunteer, which is the platform that we use for the signups. You'll create an account on Point just so that it can keep track of all of your volunteer stuff. I think it'll keep track of your volunteer hours as well if you need to report those for anything, especially like college stuff. It might be helpful. But once you are registered, you'll see the breakdown of each lesson. So you can see for the stream table on this day, we have our first lesson from 8:30 to 9:50. You can just join that one, or you can stick around for the second lesson until 11:15. So that's kind of what you will see when you go through that process. Hopefully it's really streamlined and easy. This is, first time that we're doing this method of signing up. So if it does have any issues, definitely contact me. We'll work and try to figure out how to make it a little easier. But I have pretty good confidence that it should work well. So yeah, and at the moment, I believe we only have macroinvertebrate and stream table lessons on the schedule. These are definitely the two most popular. So you will see them on the schedule a lot. And then going back to our, yes.
I believe the macroinvertebrate lesson that in the school, or do you find it pretty nearby?
Yeah, great question. So it depends on the school and their access to transportation. Some schools we work with, like Rainbow Community Charter, they have transportation easily. They can get down to like Hominy Creek, which is an interesting place to look for macroinvertebrates. But they can go a little further from campus. Luckily, up here in the mountains in the headwaters, most of the school campuses have something on campus. They have a stream there, and so we will often use those, which I actually really prefer. It helps give students a sense of place with their school campus, somewhere where they're really familiar with already, and they might not know that that stream is available there. That's an outdoor resource. And with each of these things, it will have guess I should go a little further down the page. There will be additional information with each lesson about where it is. So for instance, this one is at Valley Springs Middle School, and we have a map connected to the sign-in that has, we've got the front office is here, visitor parking is here, and then the access down to the creek is over here. Because it can be definitely complicated to figure out, where are we actually located for that day. If you're showing up for like the first lesson of the day, often our educator will be able to meet you at the front office and then walk together to the classroom or the stream site. But if you're coming kind of in the middle, our educator will often just set up at the stream and stay there between groups. And so that's when you might need to give a call and ask where specifically to find them.
What do you wear if you're in?
Yeah. So things to get in the creek, of course, are really nice. Water shoes, clothes that can get wet. Shorts are often the better option. And on each of the events, we also will have what volunteers will need to bring and where. There will also be an overview in case you need a refresher of what the tasks are to help for that particular. And then we'll also have here kind of listed out the audience that you'll be working with. So this one is 8th graders, 4 lessons throughout the day, and decent sized groups, 25. Our maximum amount of students for any lesson is 30. That pushes it, but that is the average class size for a lot of the public schools. So we stick with that. Other questions about this like registration sign up?
These schools, they have permission forms.
Yes. So yeah. So we have waivers that we will send out, and they'll let us know if we can use the photos. A lot of the public schools, yeah, it's iffy. The private and charter schools are often very okay with it. But yeah, we check in with the schools, with the teachers, and make sure that it's acceptable. And then I guess another thing, once you are through the background check, we'll also send out a volunteer. I think it's a waiver. I don't know exactly what they call it, but basically for Buncombe County Schools, they have a specific thing that anyone who's coming to visit or volunteer at the school has to fill out. And so we'll make sure that if you're coming to those lessons, that you get those resources and are approved to work in those schools outside of our approval system. And then, okay, so we've looked at the calendar. Let me also real quick just pull up our educator guide that we have as well. Fortunately, I don't think the links work in the table of contents when it's online. If you download the PDF, they should work. But basically, we have chapters that focus on the big picture, basically watershed level thinking, ecosystem connections, that sort of stuff. Then we look at some of the physical features, which is really helpful for the stream table lessons, as we're looking at large scale over time kind of impacts on our rivers. We have biological, which of course is really good for the macroinvertebrates, chemical for the chemistry testing, and then we're working on these final sections about kind of the social elements around the river, whether it's the economy or climate change and environmental justice, and we're going to see what other sort of sections we have there. So feel free to go through this at your leisure. It is on the volunteer educator page, but we'll also send it out in an email when we send you guys this recording. And then there's also a glossary, because there may be some terms in that guide that you're not familiar with. We had an education coordinator years ago who had his master's in like benthic macroinvertebrates, and like his vocabulary around the stuff was so high level. So we've captured it because it is useful. But I will be honest, we don't use a lot of these terms with the students, but as an educator, it is fun to know them just in case like a high schooler really knows their stuff. So yeah, definitely feel free to go through these 2 documents whenever you'd like. If you want to be prepared for a lesson, you can also go through our river rats page. which for each lesson will have a link to the standards and vocabulary that we aim to cover for that lesson. So it's broken down by grade, and you can kind of see, these are the main topics that the teachers need to have covered when we're doing a lesson. So if you're there and you aren't hearing our educator cover one of these and you know some stuff, feel free to chime in. Our educators would be super appreciative, I'm sure. And then at the bottom, there is some vocabulary as well. So yeah, I think that is most of the information that I'd like to share with you all. So let's jump into questions if you have any.
How many people would you say that you have volunteers in this program?
You all. This
Yeah.
is our first volunteer educator training. We dipped our toes into it a little bit pre-pandemic, and then kind of course, fell out of use, and then realized we needed a pretty robust system to check through volunteers, to have resources and signups for you all to, really be effective when you come and help. Because we wanted to make sure that when you do come out, you have a purpose, you have a job.
Yeah.
Because it sucks when you volunteer and then you're just kind of wandering things. Yeah. What else?
Do these programs kind of take a pause during summer? Because I know what you're saying, after school might eventually, depends on how that looks and whatnot. Just
Yeah.
out of curiosity, what you guys involved in summer. I know you guys run summer camps and whatnot, so but just
Yeah, so actually with the addition of our education outreach coordinator, full-time staff member who's running the after-school stuff, we can do summer programs with summer schools, with community groups, with other camps. And so all of those will be focused on this academic stuff. So yes, there will continue to be opportunities throughout the summer. We just won't be working with schools necessarily. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. It's really nice to meet you, and I'm sure I hope to see you again more.
Yes.
you guys